There's a lot of weird culture that only gets cultivated right here on the internet, and whether that's movies or TV shows or songs or memes.
I just got the new Grimace shake from McDonald's. Happy birthday!
But the thing out of all of those that I think is the most absurd is the idea of a grind set. My friends and I joke about it a lot because the idea of giving 100% of yourself into everything that you do is not effective and honestly just downright unhealthy. So today I'm going to show you some things that I absolutely refuse to give 100% on, and I get away with it every single time. Now, some of you might be familiar with this animation, and it definitely falls in line with the stuff that I like to do, whether that is complex simulations or convoluted node groups that are really hard to read. Now, I love the complexities of Blender and what you are capable of creating in that software, but I also love cheating the system. So let's really quickly run through this. So what we're going to want to do is load up an empty scene, and we're going to spawn ourselves in an icosphere. Now you can either be using an icosphere or a rounded cube. I'm actually going to go with a rounded cube. That is just my preference. The reason that we are going for this is because we want a sphere, but we want quads as our topology. Now I set my arc value to 8 because I want my simulation to appear a little bit more complex. However, you may not want to do that, and I will get to that later, but for now, stick with 8. So with that set up, we are going to go over to our simulations tab, and we are going to put a cloth simulation on this guy. We are going to change our quality steps to 10, and we are going to change our vertex mass to something like 0.5. Shear and bending values, we are going to set both of these to 0.1. I say it all the time, but these are kind of the base settings that I use to get kind of bouncy soft body like cloth physics. We're gonna go ahead and turn our pressure on, and let's start with something like 1 for the moment. We're gonna scroll down to field weights, and we are gonna turn our gravity all the way off. We're also gonna open up our collision, and we're gonna change our quality to something like 5 to start. We can change this and kind of up that number, but for our base testing, we don't need to. Let's go ahead and turn your distance as low as it'll go, which is 0.001. Enable self collisions, and we're gonna turn our friction all the way off. Now let's go ahead and enable collision on this guy, and this is so that he's going to interact with our other spheres we're going to drop in. We're just going to make maybe like 3 or 4 of these guys. We don't need to do too much because we're just going to be testing for a second. So we do something like that, and then we drop ourselves in a force field with a harmonic force on it. We could place it kind of in the middle of all of these guys for now. Let's change our strength on this to maybe something like 15. We're going to duplicate our force, and we're going to change it from a harmonic force to a turbulence force. We're going to change our flow. We're just going to crank this up to 10, and our size to something maybe like 1, and our strength, yeah, we can leave it at 15 for now. If we go ahead and hit play, we can see that these guys are kind of interacting with each other real lightly. Shouldn't be too heavy, but you can definitely see we're not playing in real time. But you can see, there we go with our basic kind of animation going on. Let's go ahead and spawn ourselves in a Bezier curve. It doesn't really need to be anything special. We're just going to flip this on the y-axis 90 degrees. We're going to select our harmonic force, and we're going to come down here to object constraints, and we are going to choose follow path and then choose our curve. Now you might notice that your harmonic force is kind of like weird. It's not following exactly where it should be. If you hit Control A, you can apply all transforms, and then it'll stick to this better. And then we can adjust our offset, and it'll follow our curve. So if we set this all the way down at the bottom, add a keyframe here, then we go maybe 180 frames out. We set a keyframe all the way up at the top of everything, like so. We can go ahead and set these guys to linear interpolation mode. We're gonna delete our other harmonic force, just make sure we have the correct one selected. This is our turbulence. So we're just gonna duplicate our turbulence and set this one back to being a harmonic force. And these settings here should all be the same from what they were before. That way both of our forces follow along this. And what we're gonna do is we are gonna change our harmonic force value to something like 100. If we go ahead and click play, we can see that the balls are trying their best to follow along with this path, but they're also smashing into each other, creating this kind of cool, bouncy sort of animation. Very simple, very easy to do, but how do we get those balls that don't have the center, that the edges are just inflated, your wireframes? Some would call that foreshadowing. All right, with that setup, we're gonna come over here and we are going to export our scene as an alembic. You guys know I love to do this. We're just gonna call it balls.alembic because of course we are. We're gonna go into a new project file. We don't need to, but I like to do things kind of instanced. That way we have layers of project files to go back to. We're gonna come file, import, ABC. We're gonna import balls.abc, and we have our entire scene here. You can see that everything's playing out and we are good to go. So we can go ahead and get rid of our curve and our forces. So in our new scene, first thing we're going to do is we're going to select one of these spheres, and we are going to add a wireframe modifier to this. And we're going to add just a little bit of thickness here, maybe something like this. And then we're going to throw a subdivision surface modifier on this, and we get these kind of rounded holes. We can crank this up a little bit so everything's nice and smooth. And you can see that this is going to be really slow now, but it still does play. and still does have cloth interaction, even though it is hollow. It looks like all of these individual tubes are inflated, and I didn't do that. That would be way too hard. That would be absurd. Why would I ever do that? Well, we could do this so simply. Why would I ever do it the other way? And if we turn the subdivision surface modifier off, you can see that we are basically playing in real time. Now, before we get too far into this video, let's take a second to talk about this video's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online tool used to facilitate easy learning as well as exploration and discovery of new topics that you find interesting. Skillshare is something that I have been using for the last couple of months and that I personally am a fan of. They reached out to me a couple of months ago and I was super stoked about it because I've wanted to work with Skillshare for a while. So naturally, when they reached out a second time, I was all over it. Last time around, I made a joke about learning guitar and not being very good at it, but truth be told, I do have a love for music and I have a real interest in learning. So in my free time, I've actually been exploring FL Studio courses, and I think that I've been able to put some of that to work, and you might even be able to hear it in my videos as I've been learning about mixing and mastering, and I think that honestly, I'm getting better at those things. So you're probably all well aware by now that Skillshare offers tons of courses in creative fields such as photography, film, and video editing, but are you aware that they also offer hundreds of career-focused classes as well? So if you're feeling stuck and kind of burned out in your regular everyday life, this could be something to spark that motivation to start working on things for yourself again, and hopefully find a career path that really suits you. And to be honest, traditional jobs are just not what they used to be. Finding work can be overwhelming with everything that can be expected of you. So why not take this opportunity to learn how to design a career fit to you and your needs? So if you want to learn more about building a creative career plan, there's a class for that. And if you want to learn how to be successful on YouTube, there's a class for that. Or if you simply want to finally learn geometry nodes so your comment section will stop yelling at you, there's a class for that. So of course, Skillshare hooked it up for all of you guys as well. The first 1,000 people to join using the link in the description get a month for free. So do yourself a favor and take advantage of that.
I'm coming to terms with this.
I want to give a helpful tip for all of my animator friends out there who are hopefully just as lazy as I am. And let's say you made this cute little guy here, but you're not a professional rig artist, I guess. I don't want to say the other one. The other one doesn't sound good at all. So yeah, let's say you've got yourself a funny little character and you want to rig him, you want to animate him, but Miximo's being funny and you're not a professional rig artist, so you can't do it yourself. Now you could go through the trouble of downloading the Miximo add-on and then replacing all of your bones, and hopefully that works, and then you can export it, and then maybe Miximo will accept it, but it probably won't because Blender only supports binary, not ASCII, which is funny. Let me show you a way around this. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to miximo.com and you are going to make yourself a little account, log in, and then we are just going to download the basic T-posed model. Then we're going to come back into Blender and we are going to go ahead and import this guy. And what we're going to do is we are just going to drag him over our character. We're going to open up our armature for our man here, and we are just going to delete all of the mesh that is associated with that skeleton. Now we're going to click our bones. We're going to go to viewport display, click in front, and then we're going to go into edit mode on these bones. And now this can be a little bit of a lengthy process, but all we're going to do is realign all of his bones so that it lines up with the joints of our characters. And honestly, it's super easy. You just drag the ends of the bones around until they line up with where they should be. Now my guy doesn't have any fingies, so we're just going to move our hand bone in, and we're going to make sure that this actually connects right there. And then we're just going to delete all of these finger bones. Also, having an uneven skeleton, like doing this by hand, is very dumb. You should definitely duplicate and flip the bones, but I'm not going to because I'm me and I'm an idiot. Something important to remember with Miximo armatures is the top bone is actually like a hat bone. It goes to the top of the head. So for the head, you just want the one that is slightly below the top bone. So if we leave edit mode, we can go ahead and click on our character, then shift click onto our armature and hit Control P to parent. And then we're going to parent with automatic weights. Now, if we come into pose mode and we rotate our bones around, you can see we're all rigged up, ready to go. This guy is very happy. Something you may want to do is zero out your Z location. That way, when we export him, he actually works in Miximo. So now just go File, Export as FBX file. We're going to uncheck Bake Animation. That way there are no animation frames. We can also delete that very first frame down there that sometimes Miximo will put in on their default armatures. We're going to open up armature and we're going to uncheck add leaf bones from our export. And then we're going to export our guy here. And if we go ahead and drag him back into Miximo, bam, he's there, he's rigged, he's good to go. He's reacting, he's dancing. I'm so proud of our little man. Look how he's grown up. And sure, if you don't want to do all of the jankness, you could go download the Miximo add-on for Blender, and then you have more rigging options anyways. And it's probably the better decision to make, but when have I ever made good decisions? I want to show you some really basic things that you can do that are kind of cheatsy, that can definitely improve your scenes, that for whatever reason, a lot of people don't think about these. So let's say you've got your little man here lit from the back and you like the look, but you don't want to add another light over here to his left because it's just a little bit too harsh or something. It's kind of getting rid of the effect that you're looking for. Something that you can do is add a bounce card. And this is used so much in film and you can see it immediately. There is no light below him, but the light is bouncing off of the ground and reflecting onto him. Now, odds are you run into this in every single scene that you've ever been in, but actually utilizing it to your advantage, there's no red light down there, there's just red material. Something as simple as this can give you much finer control over your scene if you're actually paying attention. So now this is another very small one, but I see a lot of people making this mistake. And let's say that we have two guys in our scene now and we want to turn our depth of field on and we want to kind of rack focus between the two of them. So on default, both of them are just out of focus, right? So if we go down and play with our distance and our f-stop values, we can eventually land on something that brings our front guy or our back guy in focus. But sometimes, even though we've got our front guy in focus and our back guy out of focus, our depth of field is not very strong and we can't find values that fine tune these. And it's so frustrating. It feels like we're in 3D. We should be able to do anything, and we can. We can lie. So how do we lie? What we're going to do is we're going to spawn in an empty and we're going to place it right on the head of this man here. We're going to come back to our camera and we're going to choose focus object and we are going to focus on our empty. Now, if we play with our f-stop, we can go really out of focus on that back guy and just bring this guy a little bit forward and bam, we're in focus on his face. So if we wanted to rack focus, we can put a keyframe on his location, then a keyframe at say like 70, move our empty back to this man down here like this. And if we play that, we could see that we are changing focus. If we go into material view, it might be a little bit easier to see that we just have a slight rack focus change. And it's so much easier, so much more precise. Little camera tools and tricks like this are all over the place. I have a full video dedicated to a very simple camera rig that you can build in Blender for free, by the way. I'll leave a link to that in the description. And little tricks like that you should absolutely be utilizing if you are not already. Now, odds are most of you have not seen this scene right here from me before. I only had a few hours to do this and I was kind of rushing through everything and I needed to get a bunch of effects done really simply. But not just simply, they needed to look good too. And admittedly, some parts of this don't look great. But the one part of this scene that I am really proud of that does look really good is a complete and utter lie. And that is our swinging lamp. So how exactly did I make this lamp appear to be swinging? I mean, there's real bend going on here, so clearly these are simulated, except they're not. What is being simulated is these little rectangular meshes that are acting as proxies for our mesh. I set these little rectangles up with a soft body simulation and then I pinned them to empties. Then I model our little wires that are going to be hanging down and I apply a mesh to form modifier. Select my target object and make it those initial cubes that are already simulated swaying. Then I animate our empties. Press play and we've got a swinging animation. The only thing left to do was attach our actual lampshade, and that was super easy. The only thing that I did was make a vertex selection on our initial wires here, and then I parented our mesh to that vertex group. But you can only do one, so yet again, I lied, and I bet none of you saw it till just now. But this isn't connected, and it doesn't need to be connected, because back in that original animation, you didn't see it. Don't lie to yourself. Now, if you want to know more in-depthly about how to achieve this effect, I actually got it from another tutorial here on YouTube, so I will not be breaking it down. I'm not stealing somebody else's video, but I will leave it linked in the description. It is a very in-depth, detailed analysis of how this effect is done. It's super easy to do, and you could bang it out in 15 minutes. However, a fun fact for you guys is creating this effect right here is what inspired this video. It is also the exact same effect that I used in this video here, which is a short clip from a motion piece that I did called God's Chariot, which a lot of people really liked and I was super proud of, and it's totally a lie. These are actually just planes. They're just planes that I put curves on top of and then I put hairs on them. It's a lie. So for this last one, I'm going to go over something that's probably pretty obvious to a lot of you, but a lot of people still don't know this. And I receive DMs and comments and emails about this every single day, literally, about people asking me how I create my look in Blender, how my photos look the way that they do, and why when I finish a tutorial and I render out an image to show you guys, it doesn't always look the same as when it's in a thumbnail or when I post it to my socials. And that is because Blender can only take things so far. You need to be working in post-production if if you are not already. Now, one of the best use cases for actually showing this off is from one of my least successful videos here on YouTube, where I was recreating submitted viewer art, and I created this scene, which I was very proud of within Blender. I thought that this scene looked very, very good, but it didn't look great. And by bringing this into After Effects, which is my post-production software of choice, and it doesn't matter what you choose, whether it is Photoshop or Lightroom or Looks, or if it's something on your phone, anything. There are ways to cheat and make your scene look better, and it's how I took a scene from looking like this to looking like this. And when I post this scene to something like Twitter or Instagram, nobody sees that these waves weren't all done in Blender. Nobody sees that the flashes and the glow and the blur on everything wasn't done in Blender. They just see the final piece of art, and that's all I'm advertising it as, is this is a piece that I made, right? If you're not saying, oh, this was all made in Blender, you're not lying. That's not untruthful. You went in and added post-production to make your scene look better. You still did the work. This is still your art. And personally, this looks so much better. So please, please, please do not limit yourself by thinking I can't make my scenes look as good as X person because, you know, I don't have their render engine or I'm not in their software or whatever. If you are working within 3D and you are looking at 3D artists on social medias, I guarantee you they do what I do. They finish their render, they export it, and then they put it into a post-production software and they play with their colors, they play with blur, they play with lighting. They add overlays for lens flare and dirt. They add grain. They make the scene feel alive and feel real. And I know that this is so obvious to some of you because you've been doing it forever and it's ingrained in your workflow. But for some people that are just starting out, this isn't obvious. So if you see people in the comments of this video or on social media and they're talking about just starting out, remind them that they are not limited to just one software. They can take it anywhere. Obviously, be kind about it, be encouraging, and just bring other people up. Nobody likes somebody that pretends that they know everything and that everybody else is an idiot. So my whole point with this video is not that you should genuinely go out and lie to people, but hide things in your work. Do not stress yourself where you do not have to. Do not break your back for a client if you can get away with doing something that is much simpler, but achieves the look you're going for. When you watch breakdowns from these, AAA movies and they go over how they did their smoke and fire and water and explosion and dust and all this stuff in one scene, it's never actually in one scene. They did it in a bunch of different renders, then comped them all together after the fact. Because trying to do them all together in one scene is nuts. But the audience doesn't know that. The audience doesn't know that it was all done differently. You and I know that. So try to remember, don't break yourself for the work. Let the work work for you. It could not be any more cringe. Never mind, forget I said that. I hate pretending I'm a YouTuber, man. Holy shit. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you to my patrons who continue to support me. Project files that were shown in this video will be up on my Patreon, by the way. I'm still laughing at the thing from before, I'm sorry. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys again really, really soon.